What you're about to hear is going to make your blood boil, and I'm not talking about some scripted drama or some manufactured controversy for clicks. I'm talking about a legitimately catastrophic decision that just destroyed one of the most electrifying careers in professional wrestling history. Last night on Monday Night Raw, in front of millions of viewers, Adam Pearce made the announcement that sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling world. Bron Breakker, the monster who has been tearing through WWE like an absolute wrecking ball for the past 2 years, the genetic freak who carries the legacy of the legendary Steiner family on his shoulders, the Intercontinental Champion who brought prestige back to a title that had been collecting dust for years, has just been permanently banned from WWE. The reason? An assault on Dragon Lee and Penta that Adam Pearce characterized as crossing the line, as going too far, as being unacceptable in a professional wrestling environment. Let that sink in for a moment. In professional wrestling, an industry built on physicality, on intensity, on pushing boundaries, and Bron Breakker is being permanently banned for doing exactly what made him a star in the first place. But here's where this story goes from controversial to absolutely insane. After Pearce made that announcement in the ring, after he stood there with his smug corporate face and told the world that Bron's career was over, Bron didn't just walk away quietly. Oh no, what happened backstage is going to shock you to your core. Bron followed Adam Pearce through the corridors of that arena, and what he did to the so-called authority figure was nothing short of brutal obliteration. And by the time I'm done laying out every single detail of this disaster, you're going to be demanding answers just like the rest of us. Comment below right now if you think this entire situation is absolutely insane, because what I'm about to expose is going to change everything you thought you knew about how WWE treats their future stars. Let me paint you the complete picture of what actually went down last night on Monday Night Raw, because what you saw on television was only a fraction of the real story. The segment started innocuously enough. Dragon Lee and Penta were in the ring cutting a promo about their tag team ambitions, talking about championships and opportunities, the usual scripted material that fills television time. The crowd was moderately engaged but nothing special was happening. Then Bron Breakker's music hit. The arena absolutely erupted because everyone knows that when Bron shows up, something explosive is about to happen. He stormed down that ramp with the intensity that has defined his entire career, that look in his eyes that tells you someone is about to get hurt, and he slid into the ring with bad intentions written all over his face. What followed was exactly the kind of physicality that has made Bron Breakker must-see television for the past 2 years. He didn't wait for a bell, he didn't cut a long-winded promo, he went straight into destruction mode. The spear he hit on Dragon Lee was absolutely devastating, the kind of impact that echoes through an arena and makes fans jump out of their seats. Before Penta could even react, Bron was on him with brutal clotheslines that turned him inside out. The military press power slam that followed was picture perfect, launching Penta halfway across the ring with a sickening thud when he hit the canvas. This wasn't a wrestling match, this was an assault, a statement of dominance from someone who has built his entire persona around being the most dangerous man on the roster. But Bron wasn't finished. Dragon Lee tried to recover and mount some offense, and Bron just demolished him with a second spear that might have been even more vicious than the first. The crowd was going absolutely insane because this is what they pay to see, this is the kind of intensity and violence that wrestling is supposed to deliver. Penta attempted to help his partner and Bron locked him in the Steiner recliner, wrenching back on that hold with absolutely no regard for Penta's well-being, making a statement that nobody on this roster is on his level. By the time officials and referees flooded the ring to pull Bron off, both Dragon Lee and Penta were laid out, the crowd was deafening, and Bron was standing tall looking like the monster he's always been portrayed as. Then Adam Pearce's music hit. He walked out onto that stage with his suit and his clipboard and his corporate authority, and you could see in his body language that he thought he was about to have some big moment. He got on the microphone and immediately started talking about unacceptable behavior, about crossing lines, about how what Bron just did violated every code of conduct that WWE stands for. The crowd was booing him relentlessly because they understood what was coming, they could see this corporate suit about to ruin everything good about wrestling. And then Pearce said the words that made millions of fans lose their minds. He announced that effective immediately, Bron Breakker was permanently banned from WWE, that he was stripped of the Intercontinental Championship, and that security would be escorting him out of the building. The reaction in that arena was nuclear. Fans were screaming, they were throwing trash toward the ring, they were chanting for Bron, they were making it abundantly clear that this decision was absolutely not what they wanted to see. Bron himself just stood there in the ring staring at Pearce with an expression that can only be described as pure rage barely contained. You could see his jaw clenching, his fists balling up, every muscle in his body tensing as he processed what was just said to him. Security started making their way down the ramp, and for a moment it looked like Bron might actually comply, might actually just leave the ring and walk away from this disaster. But that's not who Bron Breakker is. That's not what the Steiner family does when they are disrespected. Bron exited the ring, but he didn't head toward the exit. He headed straight for the ramp, straight toward Adam Pearce, who suddenly realized his mistake. Pearce started backing up, started calling for more security, started showing the cowardice that has defined his entire tenure as an authority figure. The cameras were following every second of this confrontation as Bron powered through security personnel like they were children, tossing them aside with one arm while keeping his eyes locked on Pearce. The segment was supposed to end there. The show was supposed to go to commercial, but what happened next wasn't scripted, wasn't approved, and absolutely wasn't supposed to make it onto television. Bron caught up to Adam Pearce right there on the stage in front of everyone. He grabbed Pearce by his expensive suit jacket and you could see the terror in Pearce's eyes as he realized he had nowhere to run, nobody to hide behind, and he was about to face the consequences of permanently banning someone who had nothing left to lose. The show cut to commercial but everyone in that arena saw what happened next. Bron delivered a Steiner line to Adam Pearce that nearly decapitated him, spinning the authority figure completely around before he crumpled to the stage floor. Security was trying to intervene but Bron was in full berserker mode, throwing punches and elbows at anyone who got close while keeping his primary focus on Pearce. What happened backstage is even more intense, and this is where multiple sources have confirmed that things went completely off the rails. Bron followed Adam Pearce through the backstage area as Pearce was trying to escape, trying to get to his office or somewhere safe, and he caught him in one of the equipment corridors away from most of the roster and crew. The beating that followed was absolutely brutal. Bron grabbed Pearce and launched him into road cases with impacts that could be heard throughout the backstage area. He picked up the authority figure and delivered a military press slam onto a stack of equipment boxes that collapsed under the impact. Wrestlers and staff came running when they heard the commotion but nobody was willing to step between Bron and Pearce in that moment because Bron had completely lost it. According to everyone who witnessed it, Bron was screaming at Pearce the entire time, demanding to know who gave him the authority to destroy careers, asking what gave this corporate puppet the right to permanently ban someone for doing exactly what wrestling is supposed to be about. He talked about his family legacy, about how the Steiner name means something in this business, about how he's given everything to WWE and this is how they repay him. And through it all, he continued physically demolishing Adam Pearce, hitting him with clotheslines against walls, slamming him onto concrete floors, making sure that Pearce felt every bit of the pain and humiliation that Bron was feeling in that moment. The violence only stopped when a massive group of wrestlers and security finally managed to pull Bron off, and even then it took at least 8 men to restrain him. Adam Pearce was left lying on the backstage floor, his suit torn and dirty, visible bruises already forming, looking absolutely destroyed both physically and mentally. Medical personnel rushed to check on him while Bron was being forcibly escorted out of the building, still yelling about the injustice of the situation, still making it clear that this wasn't over. The backstage area was in complete chaos, with wrestlers and staff talking frantically about what they just witnessed, with producers trying to figure out how to handle the situation, with nobody quite sure what comes next after something this explosive. Now let's talk about the absolute insanity of the official reason for Bron's permanent ban, because this is where the entire situation reveals itself as completely absurd. Adam Pearce claimed that assaulting Dragon Lee and Penta was unacceptable, that it crossed a line that WWE cannot tolerate. Are you kidding me? Have these people forgotten what company they work for? WWE has built its entire empire on physicality and violence. Stone Cold Steve Austin made a career out of assaulting people. The Undertaker threw mankind off the Hell in a Cell. Brock Lesnar has been demolishing people for 2 decades. Roman Reigns regularly puts multiple people through tables and nobody bats an eye. But when Bron Breakker does it, when he shows the exact kind of intensity and aggression that WWE has always valued and promoted, suddenly it's too much. Let's examine exactly what Bron did to Dragon Lee and Penta. He hit them with spears, with clotheslines, with power moves that are part of his regular arsenal. He didn't use weapons. He didn't attack them in the parking lot with a car. He didn't do anything remotely close to the level of violence we see regularly on WWE programming. He had an intense physical confrontation with 2 other wrestlers in a wrestling ring during a wrestling show. That's literally the job description. That's what fans pay money to see. And somehow this warranted a permanent ban while other performers have done far worse and received nothing more than a slap on the wrist. The double standard here is so blatant it's insulting to anyone with functioning brain cells. Just months ago we saw a backstage brawl that involved multiple wrestlers and led to legitimate injuries, and those people got brief suspensions at most. We've seen performers attack others with steel chairs in unprovoked assaults that were far more vicious than anything Bron did to Dragon Lee and Penta, and those incidents were treated as storyline developments rather than fireable offenses. We've had people go into business for themselves during matches, legitimately hurting their opponents in ways that weren't planned or approved, and they faced internal discipline but certainly not permanent bans. So why is Bron being singled out? Why is he being held to a completely different standard than everyone else on the roster? The answer is obvious if you've been paying attention to how WWE operates. This wasn't really about Dragon Lee and Penta. That was just the excuse, the pretext that gave Adam Pearce and whoever is backing him the cover they needed to get rid of someone they perceived as a problem. Bron Breakker has been vocal about creative direction for months. His questioned booking decisions. He's advocated for himself and his character. He's demonstrated the kind of passion and investment in his own career that WWE claims they want but actually resents when talent displays it. And rather than working with him, rather than recognizing that his input comes from a place of wanting to be the best and wanting to give fans the best possible product, management decided he was difficult and needed to be made an example of. This is where Adam Pearce's role becomes absolutely critical to understanding the full scope of this disaster. Pearce has been WWE's hatchet man for a while now, the person who delivers bad news and enforces unpopular decisions so that the higher-ups can maintain plausible deniability. But in this case, multiple sources indicate that Pearce actively pushed for the permanent ban rather than just being the messenger. He apparently went to management after Bron's issues with creative and painted him as someone who couldn't be controlled, someone who was dangerous to have around, someone who needed to be removed from the company entirely. He took what could have been handled with a fine or a brief suspension and escalated it to career termination because of personal animosity and a desire to assert his authority. The fact that Pearce made the announcement on live television is particularly telling. He didn't handle this privately. He didn't call Bron into an office and explain the decision before going public. He deliberately chose to humiliate Bron in front of millions of viewers, to make a spectacle out of destroying his career, to send a message to the entire roster about what happens when you don't fall in line. That's not professional management. That's vindictive, petty behavior from someone who values control and compliance over talent development and business success. And Bron's reaction, both the assault on stage and the backstage obliteration, was the entirely predictable result of that kind of disrespect. Let me be crystal clear about something. I am not condoning violence against management. I'm not saying Bron was right to physically attack Adam Pearce, but I absolutely understand why it happened. When you back someone into a corner, when you destroy their livelihood in the most humiliating way possible, when you give them nothing left to lose, you create a situation where extreme reactions become inevitable. Bron Breakker has spent years building his career, living up to his family legacy, working to be the best performer he can possibly be. And in one moment, on live television, Adam Pearce took all of that away based on a flimsy pretense that doesn't hold up to even basic scrutiny. The rage that Bron felt, the need to make Pearce understand the consequences of his actions, that's a completely human response to an unjust situation. The backstage response to Bron's assault on Pearce has been fascinating and revealing. Officially, WWE has condemned it and increased security measures. There will likely be legal consequences for Bron beyond just the wrestling ban. But unofficially, among the wrestlers themselves, there's a lot of quiet support for what Bron did. Nobody is saying it publicly because they can't afford to, but the private conversations happening in locker rooms and group chats are filled with people expressing satisfaction that Adam Pearce finally faced some consequences for his actions. He's made a lot of enemies among the talent over his tenure, he's delivered a lot of bad news and enforced a lot of questionable decisions, and seeing him get physically destroyed by someone he wronged resonated with a lot of performers who have felt powerless in similar situations. Several wrestlers have privately reached out to Bron to express their support and solidarity. They've told him that what happened was unjust, that he deserved better, that WWE made a massive mistake. Some have even told him they are envious that he had the courage to do what many of them have fantasized about doing when faced with similar corporate nonsense. This groundswell of locker room support won't change WWE's official position, but it does demonstrate that Bron wasn't some out-of-control lunatic that everyone wanted gone. He was a respected colleague who was treated unfairly and fought back in the only way he felt he could. The fan reaction has been absolutely overwhelming and almost entirely in Bron's favor. Social media exploded during and after Monday Night Raw with people expressing outrage at the permanent ban and support for Bron's actions. The hashtag supporting Bron has been trending worldwide. Fan forums and discussion boards are filled with detailed breakdowns of why this decision makes no sense from any rational business or creative perspective. Comment sections on WWE's posts are brutal, with fans absolutely destroying the company for how they handled this. There are even calls for boycotts and campaigns to hit WWE where it really hurts, in their viewership numbers and their merchandise sales. What's particularly interesting is that even fans who don't particularly like Bron's character or wrestling style are defending him in this situation because they recognize the principle at stake. If WWE can permanently ban someone like Bron Breakker for such a flimsy reason, then nobody on the roster is safe. Your favorite wrestler could be next for equally arbitrary reasons. The precedent this sets is dangerous for everyone, and fans understand that supporting Bron isn't just about him, it's about pushing back against a pattern of behavior from WWE management that has been problematic for years. The media coverage has been extensive as well. Wrestling news sites have been publishing multiple articles a day about the situation, interviewing industry veterans and analysts about the implications. Mainstream sports media has picked up the story because the drama transcends just wrestling. It touches on broader issues of workplace conflicts and corporate overreach. Podcasters are dedicating entire episodes to breaking down every aspect of what happened. The attention is intense and sustained in a way that WWE cannot simply ignore or wait out. This story has legs and it's going to continue dominating wrestling discourse for weeks if not months. Now let's talk about what WWE is losing by making this catastrophic decision, because the ramifications extend far beyond just one performer. Bron Breakker was positioned to be a cornerstone of the company for the next decade or longer. At 26 years old, he's entering the prime of his career with his best years still ahead of him. He has the look, the intensity, the family legacy, the in-ring ability, and the charisma to be a legitimate top guy who draws money and moves merchandise. WWE just threw all of that away because of backstage politics and hurt egos. The opportunity cost of this decision is staggering when you actually calculate what they are giving up. Consider the matches we'll never see now. Bron Breakker vs Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. Bron vs Gunther in a clash of styles that would have been incredible. Bron vs Centimeter Punk if Punk ever returns, a dream match between generations. Bron vs Roman Reigns in a passing of the torch moment. All of those potential main event matches that could have headlined premium live events and drawn huge numbers, all gone because Adam Pearce couldn't handle a performer with a backbone. The creative possibilities that just evaporated are countless, and WWE will feel that loss for years as they struggle to create new stars to fill the void. The merchandise revenue alone that WWE is walking away from is substantial. Bron's shirts and gear were selling consistently well. Kids wanted his action figures. His entrance music was getting downloads. All of that is money that was coming in regularly and will now completely disappear. And it's not like WWE has an abundance of merchandise movers that they can afford to lose one without feeling it. The company has actually struggled to create new merchandise stars beyond their established main eventers. Bron was one of the few younger performers whose merch was actually generating significant revenue. Throwing that away over creative disagreements is financial malpractice. But the biggest loss might be the message this sends to future talent. Young wrestlers looking at WWE as a potential destination are watching how Bron was treated. They are seeing that even if you have all the tools, even if you work hard and connect with audiences, even if you do everything right, you can still have your career destroyed if you question creative or advocate for yourself. That's going to make WWE a less attractive option for top independent talent when they are deciding where to sign. Why would you choose a company that has demonstrated they'll permanently ban you for showing passion about your character? Other promotions are going to use this in their recruitment pitches, pointing to how they treat talent better and value their input. The immediate aftermath for Adam Pearce has been interesting to observe. He's been notably absent from television since the assault, which is understandable given that he took a legitimate beating from one of the most dangerous performers in wrestling. There are reports that he's dealing with injuries from the encounter, nothing career-threatening but enough to keep him out of action for a while. But beyond the physical consequences, there's the reality that his credibility and authority have been severely damaged. An authority figure is supposed to command respect and maintain control. Pearce got brutally destroyed on camera and then even more brutally destroyed backstage. That doesn't exactly project strength or inspire compliance from the roster. There's also the question of whether WWE will take any action against the wrestlers who didn't immediately jump in to help Pearce during the backstage assault. Multiple people witnessed it happening and chose not to intervene until it had gone on for a while. That speaks volumes about how Pearce is viewed by the locker room. In theory, performers are supposed to respect authority figures and protect them from harm. The fact that so many people stood back and let Bron get his shots in before finally stepping in tells you everything you need to know about how little respect Pearce actually commands despite his official position. Some industry observers have speculated that this entire situation might lead to Adam Pearce being quietly phased out of his role. WWE might not fire him outright because that would be admitting they made a mistake, but they could transition him to a behind-the-scenes position where he's not regularly interacting with talent. The embarrassment of getting destroyed twice in one night by a performer you just banned, combined with the obvious lack of support from the roster, makes it difficult for him to continue functioning effectively as an on-screen authority figure. Every time he comes out to make an announcement or enforce a decision, fans and wrestlers alike will be thinking about how Bron obliterated him and how he couldn't do anything about it. The legal implications of what happened are complex and potentially costly for everyone involved. WWE could pursue criminal charges against Bron for the assault on Pearce, though that would be complicated by the fact that the initial confrontation happened during a wrestling show where physicality is expected. The backstage assault is more clear-cut legally, but pursuing charges would mean even more negative publicity and would likely result in Bron airing a lot of dirty laundry about WWE's treatment of talent in court. Bron, on his side, could potentially sue WWE for wrongful termination if he can demonstrate that the permanent ban violated the terms of his contract. Discovery in such a case could expose internal communications that WWE would prefer to keep private. There's also the possibility of a settlement where WWE pays Bron to go away quietly and both sides agree not to disparage each other publicly. This happens fairly often when separations get messy and both parties want to avoid prolonged legal battles. But given how public this situation has been and how much anger Bron clearly feels about his treatment, it's not certain he would accept a settlement even if offered. He might prefer to fight this publicly and expose WWE's practices even if it costs him more in the short term. The money from a settlement won't rebuild his career or restore his reputation, so there may be more value for him in making WWE face consequences for their actions. The broader wrestling industry is watching this situation very closely because it has implications for how all major promotions handle talent relations. AEW has already been making overtures to Bron according to industry sources, likely offering him a significant contract and creative freedom if his WWE ban holds. Tony Khan would love nothing more than to sign one of WWE's hottest young stars and position him prominently on Dynamite or Collision. That would be a massive publicity coup and would give AEW instant credibility in an area where they've been lacking, which is building homegrown stars with mainstream recognition. New Japan Pro Wrestling has also expressed interest, seeing Bron as someone who could fit perfectly into their strong style approach and heavyweight division. His combination of power and intensity would translate beautifully to the Japanese audience and could create some dream matches with their roster. Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and various independent promotions would all jump at the chance to book him even for one-off appearances because his name value and the controversy surrounding his WWE exit would draw significant attention and ticket sales. The irony is that WWE's permanent ban might be the best thing that ever happened to Bron's career in the long run. Yes, WWE is the biggest stage and has the most resources, but it's also a creatively restrictive environment where talent often can't reach their full potential. By forcing him out, WWE has freed Bron to explore other options where he'll have more creative control, where his ideas will be valued, and where he won't have to deal with people like Adam Pearce undermining him behind the scenes. He has the talent and name recognition to become a huge star wherever he lands, and now he has a massive chip on his shoulder and something to prove. That's a dangerous combination for WWE's competitors to weaponize against them. We've seen this pattern before with performers like Jon Moxley, who was Dean Ambrose in WWE. He was frustrated with creative, he felt restricted and underutilized, and when he finally left WWE he became one of the biggest stars in wrestling, working for AEW and appearing in New Japan and independent shows worldwide. He was able to show dimensions of his character and wrestling ability that WWE never let him display. Bron could follow a similar trajectory, proving that WWE's loss is absolutely everyone else's gain. The difference is that Bron is younger and arguably has even more raw potential than Moxley had when he left, which makes WWE's decision to permanently ban him even more short-sighted. The timing of this situation is particularly bad for WWE given their current business position. They just finalized a new television deal and are under pressure to deliver strong ratings and compelling programming. They are dealing with increased competition from AEW and the emergence of new platforms and promotions that are fragmenting the wrestling audience. They need to be creating new stars and building for the future, not permanently banning the people who could carry the company for the next decade. Every metric suggests that WWE should be in talent acquisition and development mode, not in purging mode, which makes the Bron Breakker decision even more baffling from a strategic business perspective. So here we are. Bron Breakker, one of the most talented and charismatic performers of his generation, is permanently banned from WWE for an assault that was completely in line with what wrestling is supposed to be about. Adam Pearce, the corporate suit who made that decision and announced it in the most humiliating way possible, got brutally destroyed both on camera and backstage in a beating that he absolutely brought on himself through his own actions. The wrestling world is in chaos trying to process what happened and figure out what comes next, and WWE is left trying to explain why they just threw away a future world champion over what amounts to backstage politics and bruised egos. The ramifications of Monday Night Raw are going to echo through the wrestling industry for years. Bron's career with WWE might be over, but his career in wrestling is just beginning a new chapter that could end up being even bigger than what he would have achieved if he had stayed. Adam Pearce's authority and credibility are permanently damaged regardless of what position he holds going forward, and WWE has once again demonstrated that they value control over star power, compliance over creativity, and short-term ego satisfaction over long-term business success. I want to know what you think about everything that went down. Comment below right now and tell me if you believe Bron was justified in destroying Adam Pearce after being permanently banned for such a ridiculous reason. Tell me if you think WWE made the right call or if this is one of the dumbest decisions in wrestling history. Tell me where you want to see Bron go next and what you think his first move should be now that he's free from WWE's restrictions. Should he sign with AEW and immediately go after their world championship? Should he tour Japan and build his legacy internationally? Should he fight this legally and force WWE to face consequences? Share this video with every wrestling fan you know, because this story is far from over and everyone needs to understand the full context of what really happened. Hit that like button if you're as angry about this situation as I am. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because I'm going to be covering every single development as this story continues to unfold. Something tells me we're going to see legal battles, we're going to see Bron showing up in unexpected places, we're going to see WWE trying to control the narrative and failing miserably. The fallout from Monday Night Raw has only just begun, and before this is over, the entire wrestling industry is going to be fundamentally changed by what Bron Breakker does next and how WWE handles the consequences of their catastrophic decision.